You're listening to Voices of Customer Experience. I'm your host, Mary Drumond, and on this podcast, we shine the spotlight on individuals who are making a difference in customer experience. We also proudly bring you the very best of customer experience, behavior economics, data analytics, and design. Make sure to subscribe or follow us on social for updates. Voices of Customer Experience is brought to you by Worthix. Discover your worth at worthix.com. I met our next guest at the Atlanta Digital Summit 2018, where I attended his workshop and watched his keynote, and I was absolutely blown away by his knowledge, charisma, and delightful charm. I'd like to welcome Michael Barber. Michael is the Senior Vice President and Chief Creative Officer at Godfrey. His work has been featured in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Forbes. He also led the most effective and cost-efficient campaign in the history of a Fortune 500 company, a 160-time return on ad spend, and 10 million earned media impressions within the first month of a new product launch. I'm so happy to have you on, Michael.
Hi, how are you?
Okay, so one thing I wanted to do before getting started is, Michael, can you tell me and our listeners a little bit about yourself, what you do, your background?
Absolutely. So I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief Creative Officer at Godfrey. Godfrey is a shop of 90 individuals dedicated to helping champion the world-changing work of specifically B2B industrial manufacturers. I've worked almost my entire life in some of the best agencies around the U.S. Spent the last 15 years doing that.
Great. And tell me about your background. What did you start off with? How did you start your career? Is this how you started your career? Is this what you've done all your life? Is this where you find your passion?
I didn't know. Certainly agencies and marketing has always been a passion since I was a kid. My parents owned a manufacturing company for my entire life, and I was lucky enough to spend the summers working in the marketing department there. As I came out of college, I met a gentleman, which I'm sure your listeners and you are familiar with, named Jay Baer. Jay happens to be one of the, I think, most recognized thought leaders in digital marketing and customer experience in general, and was lucky enough to get a position at his tiny little shop called Mighty Interactive coming out of school. And Jay has been a mentor and friend and has sort of placed me in different places along my career and helped me answer those tough questions of, is it greener on the other side, so to speak? And I've been lucky enough to have him around as an advisor and just lucky enough to be in agencies that were focused on two things: people and product, focused on ensuring that their people were well taken care of, and really focused on ensuring that the product, the output of that agency was the best it could be. And so I've been in the right place at the right time, I think. And just lucky enough to I've had some really incredible experiences throughout my career.
Awesome. Well, I actually got to know you at the Digital Summit Atlanta this year, where you were giving a keynote, which was really inspiring for me and really amazing. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So first of all, how did you come up with the brilliant name of this keynote, if you'd like to talk about it?
Sure, yeah. The name of the keynote is Bloody Hell, plus other marketing truths via my British mother. And it's really focused on, I grew up in a rather unique household comparatively, if you're thinking of the traditional American household. So my mom and dad came from nothing, son of a truck driver, daughter of a coal miner, and from a part of England that is focused on a very much a blue collar lifestyle. And having that experience and watching them grow a business, first immigrate to the US and then grow a business and be incredibly successful and live the very typical, if you will, or definitive American dream, if you will. My mom and dad provide this, and particularly my mom, this unique perspective on how to treat people. And they use that in their business. And I've tried to coalesce those lessons into not only thinking about how do you think about marketing campaigns and developing your brand and go-to-market strategies, but on product design, down into the tactical weeds of all these different things we're doing as marketers, whether it's SEO or PPC or display or email or any number of those tactics. They've just provided, I think, this incredibly rich framework for how to think about how we treat customers and how we're thinking about things inside of our organizations.
Great. And so I've also heard you in the past use Beyonce as a reference and her Lemonade album to try to, I think it was add a bit of sexy to something that's not sexy at all, which is email automation. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Last year, I did a whole session around how to make email better using acronyms of Beyonce songs. And here's the deal. I mean, when I think enough of us marketers and enough of us go to conferences every single year, and conferences for me are a great experience to get to know people. But also, I think where conferences are struggling is certainly from a content perspective. And so, if I'm going to get on stage and I'm going to talk about something, I want it to be just as entertaining as it is informative. And so whether it's utilizing Beyonce as a metaphor or whether it's using my crazy British mother as a metaphor, I want people to walk away and be able to tangibly remember, what did they just learn? That this is not just an exercise in telling someone that this is the way they should be thinking about how to think of products, how to market, how to think about their experiences with customers, but how can they make sure that they feel those things and they can remember them? So Beyonce and my mom provide these, I think, excellent metaphors for ways people can think about them when they're sitting in meeting rooms and talking about campaigns or working on briefs for their team.
Well, so tell us a little bit about this keynote that you do and about how you use your British mom to influence the way people see their customers.
Sure. So the way the keynote first starts out is really an exploration of why my mom becomes that metaphor. And I explain just a couple of key examples about who she is as an individual, that she is this yin and yang that came from nothing and then lived the American dream. And that provides a unique insight. She's also a typical British woman in the sense that she loves a good drink and provides some lessons when she's had one or two glasses of wine and really couch that. And here's why she's a good perspective. It then moves on to, why is this important? Why do we have to think about customer experience these days? And I show some really, I think, interesting, sometimes comedic, sometimes sad examples of organizations and missteps that they're making. For the sake of example, one of those is putting out ads into the space, into the marketplace when those ads don't resonate with a person. So for the sake of example, there's an ad in there for a very well-known CPG that is about making sure that you're ready for summer and that you've got your deck ready to go, per se. And they had utilized this ad during literally the deepest, darkest months of the winter when no one is really fully focused on winter. They're just trying to survive. No one's trying to think about summer. They're just trying to survive winter, and how that ad targeting just doesn't make sense in a normal human being's head. All the way through utilizing an example of when you're sitting on an airplane and you want to watch, you've just gone through all the rigmarole of getting onto the airplane, and you're sitting down and you've got 14 screaming babies around you. And to get onto the Wi-Fi or get onto the entertainment system, you've got to watch literally the worst 30 or 60-second ad you've ever seen in your life. And you have to be thinking as a normal human being that I am never going to buy anything from this particular organization because you have just wasted the last 30 seconds of my life.
Right.
And really get at this idea that time is likely the most valuable human asset that we have, and we're wasting a lot of it. And then Mom's lessons become a framework of 5 specific things for how I think we've got to, when we're sitting down in boardrooms, when we're writing briefs, when we're thinking about customer experiences or product design or any number of things that we do as individuals with our teams, 5 key things that organizations have to be thinking about.
Oh, that's great. I read yesterday, I was reading about Virgin Hotels and Sir Richard Branson talking about part of the design that he tried to insert into his team at Virgin Hotels is to empathize with the guests and what they've been through before arriving. So, before coming to Virgin Hotels, what has that person been through along the course of their day? They've probably flown in, had to wait for their baggage, gone through, security, whatever, traffic. Since it's kind of a business hotel, they're emailing back and forth, they're confused. And when they arrive at the hotel, all they want is an escape. They want a place to turn off that external world and just relax for a moment. And that's what they try to provide. So I think that's kind of an example of companies who've seen exactly what you're saying and are trying to do the opposite or trying to fix that somehow.
Yeah, it's a really keen insight is understanding that experience is not just experience with your brand. It's experience, how did they get there? What was their journey to get there? And also after, what does that experience become when they have clicked buy? that it is much more than just everything that's in between awareness and purchase. And these days, I think probably even more important what happens before that awareness and well after that purchase.
Voices of Customer Experience is brought to you by Worthix. If you're interested in customer experience, behavior economics, or data science, follow Worthix on social media or subscribe to our blog for the best content on the web. Well, it's interesting because we tend to look a lot at customer experience in, say, the real world, whereas you're totally, you work within the digital sphere and digital marketing. And that allows you to have this keen observation on the digital experience as well, and how people go through this with either remarketing ads or ads before they're able to access video, for instance, or even other almost booby traps that companies tend to set up for customers, right? So Joe Pine, who was a guest on our podcast, he told us one of the things he mentioned is, well, your customers don't mind sharing their personal information with you as long as that's being used to help you. The problem is when people take this personal information and they use it to draw a huge target on your back and constantly, target you with remarketing ads and God knows what, right? So it has to do with respecting how companies use the information and the personal information that they're provided with on behalf of customers, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we can all agree that our customers want a timely, targeted, and relevant experience, but we want to understand that that's done in a way that feels good to us versus feeling good to you. And I think too often most marketers, and this is just an unfortunate case of a disconnect inside of a lot of big organizations, is we look at the wrong metrics, so those drive decision making for the sake of remarketing, right? It's very easy for us to say, here's the impressions that we got, right? Here is how many people we drove, right? But what was the cost of driving those many people? Because often the next statement is, and we hit or were slightly above industry averages. And I think, a little digital marketing angel kind of dies every single time somebody says something like that, because we often, and by the way, I'm not going to take credit for that statement. I've heard it. That's somebody else's words. I just want to make sure in case anybody's listening. But I think we often are, especially within digital, we're always reaching for average. And I challenge our team, and I try to challenge our clients as well to think well beyond the averages. Not in the sense of you need to be blowing those averages away, but just elevating the discussion beyond averages. That if we are reaching for averages, then we are actually performing in an average way. We are not doing anything that is being more tangible for us from a success perspective, but also we could be hurting all those other people that live outside those averages with the activities that we're doing. So, it's a really interesting observation for sure.
Can you give me some examples of how you and Godfrey are working towards making your company's experience above average?
Sure. I can give you a very tangible example of something we've done very recently, both for ourselves and for a client. I'll start with client. We have challenged a lot of our clients in the past 2 years to think well beyond just their individualized marketing experience, and think about all of the things that help drive marketing metrics and success. And for the sake of one particular client, that has been understanding, why do the companies that spend 10% more than the average organizations that they deal with, why do those companies spend those dollars with them? Why is it that there is a certain subsection of clients that come to them and they often spend more comparatively to the other section of those clients? And we've really honed in on this tactic of understanding what are the things, what are the untangibles or the tangibles that make those particular types of groups of customers and clients spend more with you, and really keenly focused on those understandings of that why, those insights into why they are spending more. There is often, at least in almost every client we have tried to dive into that research and those insights. There's often anywhere from 3 to 6 specific reasons as to why they will spend more dollars with their organization. And the challenge for marketing is to understand, how do we apply those particular insights to the rest of our customers? Whether that's working with sales or product design or road mapping of products or supply and logistics, that there are key things that there are reasons why people spend a few more dollars with you. And those things have to be talked about, improved, leveraged for your other set of clients. So that's a very specific client example. A very recent example of us is we have, just like every other agency, we are terrible at our own, at number one, focusing on our own brand and our marketing efforts. And we've really, over the last 6 months, done an about face on that and challenged ourselves to do better. And the output of that has been a brand new site that launched just this past Monday. And it was all focused around understanding what our clients were looking for, what future team members may be looking for, and how do we marry those two to provide a really good experience, because those are our two core audiences that are coming to our site. And although I think that's sort of table stakes these days, but we did a variety of things like brought clients and prospective clients into the building to do design exercises with us, brought potential employees that we wanted to be able to hire in the future and said, what would you be looking for? Actually did user acceptance testing with those particular groups as well, that allowed for some iterative changes as we were going through that testing process. And so I think, that's just a couple of key things that we've been doing both with clients and internally in challenging ourselves to create things that I think are a lot more tangible for customers than maybe what happened in the past.
And what is it that you feel made you, as a marketer, champion customer experience? Because lots of times CXers or customer experience professionals kind of separate themselves from marketing in a certain way. And what made you kind of want to join in that topic and start working towards improving a customer experience within marketing?
The simple answer is that there are way too many times of the day where I just put my hands in my face and say, why is this happening as a customer? Why are you doing this to me? I mean, that's the real simple answer. It's like, if you are a fan of Seinfeld, it's like the very specific George Costanza sitting in the restaurant, and every single time Seinfeld said something ridiculous, he kind of puts his hands in his face. Or there's some great gifs of that.
Serenity Now.
yes, exactly right. It is that. That's what's driven me crazy. Is for whatever reason, I just run up against so many examples, and it's just become this antenna for me. And that's been the reason. It's that I want to make sure that if we are doing something from a marketing perspective, that we are not only thinking about what is this driving, why are we doing this, but what is this impact before and after the experience? Because it's just all so intertwined these days.
I've seen you actually give some of those examples on your Twitter account, where you're in a hotel somewhere, and you're like, this hair dryer is ridiculous. And that's something entertaining. If our listeners want to follow Michael on Twitter, it's always an entertaining experience.
I do my best to try and balance those things, to not be like the Debbie Downer and, the sort of pessimist of the Twitter sphere, like so much of the volume of the noise is on Twitter these days. But there are just so many good examples of bad experiences. And I really want marketers and people to think about it. It's so easy. It's so easy.
Yeah, I go through that myself where, I start writing about negative experience or negative examples of customer experience. And I'm like, wait, come on, this isn't even fair. There are so many examples to pick from. There's just so much negative, but sometimes at certain points we have to start trying to maybe look at things from a company perspective as well and understand what that company has to go through to consistently provide good company, customer experiences to their customer. Try to understand the difficulties and work towards improving them, right? Identifying the pain points and trying to solve them as opposed to constantly just nitpicking and pointing out the issues, no?
Absolutely. And I think the one thing I will say is that it is very, very hard to do that. But I would also say it is often the smallest of improvements that make people smile. And so those small improvements sometimes don't take a gargantuan organizational effort. And I think that if we as either marketers or CXers or wherever you fall in the business, if you can think about what are the tiny little improvements that we can be making along the way, those tiny little improvements add up to sometimes an even better outcome, an even better experience. Sometimes it isn't about going top to bottom in the organization. Sometimes it's just about a little button change on the website, or it's a different word that you use as a welcome message when someone's walking into your retail location. It can be any number of things. There are little tiny tweaks that we can be doing that make all the world of difference inside of our customers' heads.
What do you think is more important, to be constantly wowing your customers and giving them this amazing experience, or just kind of consistently providing a predictable experience that's positive most of the time?
The first thing that you must focus on is consistency, is that I must not be surprised when I've gotten to know your brand along the way, that something is different. Once you've nailed that, once you've nailed a consistent experience, then you can surprise and delight. But if you don't provide a consistent experience and then you surprise and delight, I'm just surprised and I'm wondering why I'm surprised. Surprise and delight is great when the consistency has come along the way. It elevates the impression of the organization inside your head. If it is not consistent, if you surprise and delight before consistency, you're not elevating, you're simply surprising. And if that surprise is coming from a place of, oh, this is so much better than what I'm accustomed to, that's not a good surprise.
Right. Because then it generates that need to constantly be surprised. And if they're not surprised and they're like, hey, where's my surprise? Is that it?
That's it. And if you need a very tangible example of this, think of companies that focus on discounting, right? If you focus on discounting all the time, you set the precedent for a discount. So when you remove a discount, you are then surprising the customer, and it's not a good surprise. But if you are going to set a consistent experience, you've got to live up to that experience. The surprise should be something that elevates, again, that experience. So I think it's just something we often, the easy stuff is the surprise and delight. The hard stuff is delivering a consistent experience. And sometimes we utilize the surprise and delight as a way to mask the inconsistencies that we're delivering as organizations. And customers feel that. It's not something that some of them may not tangibly recognize it, but they're feeling it at a psychological level. And they certainly will, I think, value the idea of consistency, that I'm not going to be surprised along the way, more than, hey, I've just had this one tangible little tiny surprise from this brand that I didn't expect much.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, especially when talking about discounts. When I shop at stores that are known for their discounts, if there is a product that isn't discounted, I will not buy it. I'll either just wait for it to go on sale or just keep procrastinating that purchase till forever, because I'm like, no, I'm not getting a good deal here because everything else in the store is 70% off. So Why would I purchase this one thing for its full value? Right?
It's very true. It's very true.
I've heard Tom Goodwin actually talk about that, where he's like, I don't want to be delighted. I just want a consistently good experience. Like, stop it. I don't want you to manipulate me, into this situation, especially for those of us who work in marketing and we know what's going on. We're like, I see you. I see what you're doing here. I don't want that. I just want to, have this experience and move on my merry way.
Yeah. And I do agree with Tom, and the other person that shares this opinion on surprise and delight is also Jay Baer. And he's been in a couple of his keynotes this year. He's talked about how he doesn't believe surprise and delight is a good tactic for us as organizations. Now, often I think that surprise and delight is often at the detriment of normal customers. So the surprise and delight is often for your brand loyalists or the people that spend most money with your organization. I would do it for every single customer versus just doing it for those customers that are spending the most dollars or impact your organization. More. Yes.
But in that case, aren't they spending more because they feel like they're getting a better experience, and what they're paying for is that experience? Because, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I feel like that kind of goes against what most people are preaching, which is that if you want to escape price wars, then you have to offer better experience, and people will pay more to have a better experience.
Yeah, this is a healthy balance that we're trying to nail right. How do we not alienate the people that drive a significant part of revenue for the people that may drive the most? Because at the end of the day, it all adds up. And I think that's our challenge as customer experience groups, as marketers, is to understand where is the balance where we delight people, but we also don't alienate them as a part of the process. And that comes down to brand by brand, understanding how our customers react. On an airline, it's almost an expectation that people are going to be treated differently based on where they're seated, right? So it's a less of a disconnect. But in other places, it's often painstakingly shown that, or painstakingly obvious that someone is being treated very differently because of the the money that they have spent or the times that they have done business with an organization. I think we have to try and strike a healthy balance from organization to organization based on, what our customers tell us.
Worthix is disrupting the market research industry with cutting-edge technology and a revolutionary methodology. Visit Worthix.com to learn how we're using artificial intelligence to improve customer experience at companies like Verizon, Jeep, Blizzard, HP, and L'Oreal. Speaking of airlines, Southwest is constantly being brought up as a company that does customer experience really well. And I know that you give an example in your keynote about Southwest and how they do surprise and delight every once in a while, but it's natural, it's organic, it's not a forced situation. Do you want to give our listeners a rundown of that story?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the thing in that specific case of surprise and delight that Southwest does quite well is, number one, rewards and the idea of rewarding are done regardless of what type of individual you are. There's no different levels for, points earned versus dollars spent. It's a very democratic way that they reward customers. If they're giving away a free drink on a flight, everyone gets a free drink. It's because there's, it's a one-class airline essentially. The specific Southwest example I share very often, it relates to how they go to market as a brand, which is love. And they really lead from the heart. It's built into the heart of who they are as an organization. And this idea of empathy, which is one of the lessons that comes from mom, is my mom always said from a very early age, never judge a book from its cover. And this idea of being able to lead with your heart and lead with empathy is something I think Southwest does incredibly well, and something that we need to be able to allow other organizations to do well too. And it comes down this idea of empathy because we live in this very challenging geopolitical environment at the moment, where we're experiencing a lot of lack of empathy for different voices and different perspectives. And I think what Southwest does incredibly well is they've built this idea of empathy into their brand, and they live it every single day. And they allow employees that are touching customers and from top to bottom, frontline people that create the experiences with their customers to deliver empathetic experiences every single day, whether that's, if someone looks like they've had a rough day, acknowledging that, or it's, somebody loses a bag, they allow and will compensate their team to drive that bag out to a customer if their baggage system can't handle getting that bag to a customer. Or there's a great story on any number of publications about a woman who was getting married the next day, and her wedding dress did not make the connection. And Southwest, within 25 minutes, had authorized their staff, I can't remember the city specifically, but had authorized the team in that city to take that woman and spend up to $10,000 to replace that dress when it didn't show up in the city. So these are the things that, that organizations have got to understand that create really impactful moments, is being able to allow people that talk with and interact with customers on a daily basis to create those experiences and then tell them. Both of those parts are important, is that we have to give customers a place where they can tell us about these experiences. And when they're incredible, figure out really easy ways as organizations to tell them, because people want to listen to these things. That's the good stuff. You make someone laugh and cry, they're going to want to look at that content. So Southwest just does this in just such a myriad of ways that you could talk all day about.
Yeah, well, there are a couple of companies that have very successfully done this, and they've created this reputation of being amazingly customer-centric companies. And I always bring up the example of Chewy, being a dog owner myself, and I love Chewy. I love what they do as a brand. And in the mail the other day, I got a handwritten card by someone at Chewy just saying, Mary, we wanted to thank you and check in on your dog, Poppy, and see how she's doing. Hopefully she's enjoying the nice treats that we sent her the other day. And they did. They sent treats in the mail for Poppy. There isn't a single, I never expected Chewy to do that. But the fact that they did do that, and then were able to personalize my experience in this way and make me feel like I'm an integral part of that company and I belong, it makes me a brand loyalist, and it makes me be not only passionate about it and continuously buying from them, but evangelizing as well.
Yeah.
These brands that are able to provide their customers, make them feel special on occasion, I think they're the ones that are going to continue to be successful. My one question is, can they do this in the long run? Can they continue to do this over time and still be profitable and still be able to prove to maybe the shareholders that they're a profitable business and that being customer centric to that degree is profitable from a business perspective? Any views?
Yes. This idea of being customer centric, the only way that it stays, that you continue to do it as an organization and you continue to try and elevate yourself, is that the leader at the top, the CEO, the president, that they have a foundational belief that being customer centric is important for their organization and provides success for them, and they can help understand and champion that at all parts of the organization. It falls down almost every single time if you do not have an organizational leader who believes that a customer centric organization is what creates success for them. And that's number one. Number two, we have to understand that every single time a customer sees an elevated experience, they reset their expectations. So your experience with Chewy, my experience with Southwest Airlines, it means that I reset the bar of my expectations. So our challenge as experienced professionals and strategists is to understand where that bar is sitting and ensure that we're at least meeting expectations. And if there is a brand that has challenged almost every single company that most consumers interact with on a day-to-day basis, it's of course Amazon, which has just elevated the bar and made other organizations have to step up to that bar, from how they provide a merchandising experience from a digital perspective, how they go about checking out. Checkout processes were maybe the most ridiculous experience you ever saw for years. A 7-step checkout just to buy a $5 product. And Amazon did the one-click buy button. And then you've seen e-commerce experiences get progressively just so much better over the last few years. And then 3, it's that belief that comes from that leader is ingrained from a brand perspective and then all the way into all different parts of that organization. It's the only way it holds up for long term. And finally is figuring out the metrics that ensure that, when you are a customer centric organization, what are those metrics that show that creates profitability? For some of our clients, it's that 10% exercise. Is that we take the customers that are spending marginally more dollars, significantly more dollars than other organizations. We try and understand what are the things that we're doing for those customers that deliver that sort of money, applying it to customers that aren't maybe spending that amount of money and seeing the impacts on spend and from those customers. Those are metrics you've got to figure out organization to organization. For some, it's going to be customer lifetime value. For some, it's going to be net promoter score. For some, it's going to be pure spend and revenue. But we've got to understand what those metrics are and how to measure them, and then continue to leverage those insights and bake them into how we talk to and interact with customers.
I did hear you talking about different metrics to voice of customer metrics that companies can use to hear how their companies feel about the experience the company is providing, and make sure to stay tuned to that and use that information to improve the way they do business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the way that you can do that, there's certainly, understanding and being able to democratize that data, right? That it's not just about the teams that are collecting that data. It's about showing that data at all different parts of the organization. The way we do that at Godfrey is we have dashboards that are available, we have a single dashboard that's available for our organization to understand how are our people doing? What do they think of things happening? Because 92 people swimming in the same direction is very, very hard to do. Number 2, how are we doing from a financial performance perspective? We, unlike I think most agencies, are very transparent with financials. How are margins doing? How are we doing from a top line revenue and expenses perspective? And then thirdly, how are we focused on products that are impacting our clients, whether those are campaigns or whether those are improving different things like voice of the customer metrics. So how do you go about democratizing those data sets so they become very tangible for not only your executive team and those people that are making decisions, but every part of the organization so it impacts them on a daily basis so they can see those metrics and understand this is what I'm doing to impact those metrics.
Oh, that's great. Getting the whole team excited and get them on board so that everyone keeps that one metric in mind, right?
Yeah, very much so.
Well, that's great. Michael, thank you so much for being here with us today. How can people reach you? If people want to hear more about what you have to say, where can they find you? What's the best way to contact you?
The best way is Twitter, but I'm at Michael J. Barber on Twitter or every single social network that's out there. I was one of those lucky ones that hopped onto them and grabbed my name. So if you'd like to get a hold of me, I'm at Michael J. Barber on most places in the interwebs, if you will.
Great. Okay, well, thank you so much. And we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you for listening to Voices of Customer Experience. If you'd like to hear more or get a full podcast summary, visit the episode details page or go to blog.worthix.com/podcasts. This episode of Voices of Customer Experience was hosted and produced by Mary Drumond, co-hosted by James Conrad and edited by Nick Gomez. Blog copy and summary by Emma Waldron.